Good morning again, because I keep on changing the recorder. Okay, we're on 2B3, the last side on Beis Beis. We stopped a little bit abruptly yesterday, but what we're going to do is we're still in the middle of the discussion of is or night, day, is it light? We're going to conclude the discussion, and then we're going to address the question of why do we have such a long discussion about this? What is going on over here? So we're going to run through a couple of halachos that we're not going to unpack fully because they're not really relevant to Maseches Pesachim, but they're all different. The Gemara is going to be pulling from different sections all over Shas. So we're going to touch upon many different halachos but in those discussions, in those brises and mishnayos, it uses the word or. Okay, so I'm going to briefly discuss each one, but if you don't fully jump in, that's okay. Okay, so the first thing we have to know in 2B3 is the following, is that when there is Rosh Chodesh could fall out on one of 2 days of a month. It could fall on the 30th day of a month or the 31st day of the month, okay? Depends on when they see the new moon. Sorry? Isn't it 29 or 30? The month is 29 or 30 days, but Rosh Chodesh will fall out on day 30 or day 31. So because of that, the question is like this: where they established a new month in Yerushalayim. The question is, how do they spread the word to the rest of the community? They don't have phones. They don't have other ways of communication. So I think many of you are familiar. They used to have these torches, and they used to go on top of a mountain and light a torch and wave the torch. Then the next mountain further on, they would be someone waiting there. They'd see a torch, and they'd go all the way until Bavel, and that way they would spread the word. Beautiful. This is where their way of communication, and they would spread the word. The question is, when do you spread? So the Bryce is going to tell us over here is that when they establish the new month on the 30th, then they would waive it. If it would be an extended month, it would be what's known as like Eber month. They would extend it one extra day, then they would not do it. So if Rosh Chodesh falls on the 30th, they would wave the fire. If it will fall out on the 31st, they would not wave those torches. So far, so good. Let's see the terminology of the brisa. Meisvei. We ask a challenge on the opinion that says or means day. This brisa seems to conflict with that. It says ein masir masuos. They do not light torches ela ala chodesh anir bizman lekacho unless the month falls out on its time, which means on the 30th day. The ein masai masir masuos. When do we light the torches? Laor iburo. In the or after the day. Okay, what does it mean, the or after its day? So clearly, when do they wave torches? Do they wave torches during the day? No, it is not a good idea to if you want to let people see your light, when do you see it? You see it at night, right? To alma or to who? Clearly you see that or means night. And the Gemara says, once again, there's a second proof. Shma mina, you're right. Or does mean night. The term or clearly means night. Okay, now we continue asking more questions, even though we've already proved this. Okay, and the Bryce is like this: Meisvei. The Kohen was standing the entire night, and he was doing avoda the entire night. So whenever Kohen does avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, he has to begin his avoda, he begins his service by washing his hands and feet. That is a halacha. It's brought down in the Torah. You have to wash your hands and feet, and part of the reason we wash our hands in the morning is a way of emulating the Kohanim who did so. Okay, so the Gemara says, if he was serving the entire night, and now it's the morning and he wants to continue doing avoda. Sometimes that happens. It was an all-nighter in the Beis Hamikdash. We think everything closed up. It's not true. They had stuff going on all night. So it's an all-nighter. Now he wants to continue doing something in the morning. Le'ora taon kiddush yadayim reglaim. In the ora, he needs to wash his hands and feet again. Divrei Rebbe. That's what Rebbe says. So what does or mean in this context? Morning. The Gemara says no. Ora shani. It doesn't say or there. It says ora. Maybe that's a different term. Our Gemara is discussing what is the term or in our Mishnah. Ora could mean something else. Therefore, although in this brisa it clearly means morning, maybe that's not a question. Okay, I'm going to ask another question. Maybe Mar Zutra now on 3a. Mar Zutra asks, Hamapelas or l'shmonim ve'echad. If a woman miscarries during the or of the 81st day after she gives birth to a girl. So let's understand what's going on over here. These halachos not so relevant to us, but in because we don't live with this level of tumah and tara. But in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, what would happen is as follows. In Parshas Tazria, it talks about how long a woman after she gives birth is tamei, and then there's days of tumah, and then there's something called days of purity, days of tahora. And during those days of purity, if she sees any blood, that blood is not cause her to be tamei, not in the context of nida, but in the context of karbanos that are brought. Okay, so not to confuse, it's not relevant to the regular laws of nida. This is relevant to a karban that's brought. And basically what comes out of these halachos is that if a woman were to conceive pretty much right after she gives birth, and then she were to miscarry during these days of purity, okay, then we would, normally after miscarriage, a woman has to bring another karban, but over here she would not have to bring an additional karban. The karban she brings after those days of purity is the same karban. There's one karban for the birth, and that would include any miscarriages that happened during that time. Make sense? In other words, after the days of impurity and purity, she brings a karban for her birth. Okay? That is Parshas Tazria. That's halacha. Now, if she were to miscarry during those days of purity, the korban she brings at the end of that period would include that miscarriage. If she miscarriages afterwards, after those days of purity, meaning day 90, let's say, of course, she would have to bring a second korban for the miscarriage as well. But here we're talking about a case that if she miscarries on the 81st, on the or of the 81st. Now again, what happens over here is that 80 days, clearly if she miscarries during that time, one korban suffices. On the 81st day, she brings a korban. You can only bring a korban during the day, okay? The Gemara over here says, if she miscarries on the or of the 81st, then what's the halacha? Beis Shammai poter mikorban. Beis Shammai says, the korban she brings on the day of the 81st suffices. She doesn't bring a second one. Beis Hillel mechayven. Beis Hillel says, no, she has to bring a second offering. Amr lehem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai, Maishna or shmoina ve'echad, miyom shmoina ve'echad. Beis Hillel, who says she is obligated, says, what is the difference between the or of the 81st and the daytime of the 81st? So what does or mean in this context? Say, what is the difference between or and day? That's the words of Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says, what is the difference? Just like if she were to miscarry during the day of the 81st, she'd have to bring a korban, a second korban. So too, if she miscarries on the or of the 81st. So what is or in this context? Night, right? Very good. So, im shiva, then the Gemara says, im shiva lo tuma, if the or is equivalent to the daytime in regards to tuma, lo yishva lo the korban, should not be the same for korban. Bottom line is, but Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, the fact that Beis Hillel says Beis Shammai, maishna or shmona ve'echad, mi yom shmona ve'echad, the fact that he says, why is or different than the day? Shmamina or tahu, clearly the word or means night. Shmamina, once again, that is a proof. The Gemara says further, another objection. Meisvei, we have a brisa, yachal yenechal or lishlishi. It might have been thought that a shlamim offering is allowed to be eaten during the or of the third day. Again, I'm going quickly through these halachos because we can unpack each of these extensively. Sorry? So yeah, with a korban shlamim is eaten for 2 days, okay? Now, after korban shlamim is brought, you have 2 days to eat the meat. The Bryce over here says, you may have thought, whenever it says you may have thought, we're going to reject that. But you may have thought that you're also able to eat the korban on the or of the third day. On the or of the third day. Okay? Vidinu. And you would have said so by a logical argument. Why? Zvachim nechal liyam echad. Some offerings, okay, defined over here by zvachim, are eaten for 1 day. Ushlamim nechal l'shnei yamim. Whereas shlamim, a different type of offering, the one we're talking about, is eaten for 2 days. Mala halan laila echa achar yom. Just like over there in the case of zvachim offerings, the night is you eat the night after the day, meaning you're still able to eat the zvachim on the night after the day. Afkan, here too by the shlamim, laila achar yom, we should be able to eat on the night after the day. Tamalomer, the pasuk therefore comes to refute this and say, biyom zivchachem yachel, u'macharas va'noser ad yom. What the pasuk says, in the day of your shlam offering you could eat it, on the next day, okay, then it says that remains fine. Be'od yom hu nechal, the Gemara says, during the day you eat it, ve'eno nechal le'or shlishi. But it should not be eaten on the or of the third day. So what does or mean in this context? Night. Clearly it means night. Okay, we'll come back to that, but first the Brisa continues.
I'm not clear why you think that night would be allowed if you're only given 2 days.
Well, it says, in the case of 1 day, you have the night after. So when you have more time, you should certainly have the night after as well.
But it's also still brought during you still started during the day.
Yeah, both offerings you brought. So we say
day, night. How are you going to get confused about another night? I don't understand where.
Well, because we're saying based on a kavachomer, it's not a classic kavachomer. We're saying as zvachim, which you have less time, but you ate it on that day, and we know that you're allowed to eat on the night after. So had the Torah not said anything, just said 2 days of shlamim, we'd say, oh, shlamim, which you have more time, you should also have the night after, the night going after the days.
But it starts during the day and goes.
Both times it starts during the day, but there's
right. So what are you going to be continuing into?
Eating.
Right, but it's day and the night, and it's day and the night. So where's the next?
No,
you'll skip the next day and go to the next night.
No. The night after the 2 days, day, night, day, and then what about the night?
So
the matzeh.
It's not full 2 day night.
Not full today. Yeah. The immediate night after. Correct. Okay, the Gemara says there's complete tangent over here. We just continue reading the Brisa. Yachal yisaref miyad. You may think that it should be burnt immediately after the nightfall of the second day. In other words, we just established that the shlamim is not eaten on the night after the second day. Maybe you would think you have to burn the shlamim that night, meaning there's a general halacha that whenever there are karbanos that are left over that were not eaten fully, you have to burn them. You have to burn the extras. Okay, you don't just leave them. You burn them. So you may think that you have to burn them immediately after nightfall on the second day. V'dinhu, and again we would use a logical argument. Zvachim nachal l'yom v'layla echad. Zvachim offerings, which are eaten for 1 day and 1 night. Ushlam nachal m'shnei yom v'layla echad. And shlam, which are eaten for 2 days and 1 night in between. Mala alan teichaf la'achilas rifa. Just like by the zvachim, immediately as soon as you're no longer allowed to eat it, you burn it. And now we're on 382. Af kan teikaf la'achilas rifa. So too in the case of shlamim, the time for burning should be immediately after the eating. Tamalomar va'anoser b'sar azavach b'yom hashlishi ba'esh yisaref. The pasuk says explicitly that it's burned during the day. B'yom hatzasaref, you burn it during the day. V'yat hatzarfo b'layla, you don't burn it during the night. But the bottom line is, which we're trying to prove, the fact that the Brisa used the term, you may have thought it to be eaten in the or, and in that context it clearly meant night. Alma or tahu. Clearly, we see that or means night. Shema Mina, like Gemara says, yes, we've just established that or means night. Okay, again, we're going to have another proof. Tashma, or shel Yom Kippur misval sheva misvada. On the or of Yom Kippur, now here we're talking about the different tefillos that we say on Yom Kippur. Okay, Yom Kippur has unique davenings. Okay, we have extra, we have Ne'ilah, this and that. We're going to see a very interesting halacha, which you're going to be disappointed that we don't pass in this way, but you'll see what I mean in a second. Or shel Yom Kippur misval sheva misvada. On the or of Yom Kippur, Shemona Esrei consists of 7 blessings and vidui. Right? There are 7 brachos in Shemona Esrei and vidui. Right? If you count the blessings, there is the 3 in the beginning, there's the 1 in the middle, Mekadesh Yom Kippur, the long one, Mekadesh Yom Kippur, the long bracha that we say for the middle one. We say vidui there, and then there's 3 more. So that's 7 brachos, right? The 3 opening ones, the 3 concluding ones, and then there's 1 long bracha in the middle with vidui. Shacharis, in the morning, Misval Sheva Misvada. Okay, in the morning, one says Shemona Esrei, 7 blessings with vidui. Now we just stop over here already. What does or mean in that context? Night, because the next we said or, okay, whatever or means, then it says the next one chakras, which means morning, so clearly or means night, okay, fine. B'musaf mispal shem misvada, then we have musaf, which also has 7 blessings and vidui. B'mincha mispal shem misvada, and mincha, we say 7, okay, it doesn't mention anything about Ne'ilah, but fine. And then it says, Ba'arvis mispal me'ein Shemona Esrei. But for Mariv, we make an abridged Shemona Esrei. Why would they have an abridged Shemona Esrei on Matzah Yom Kippur? People are hungry. The Torah is very, the Chachamim are very sensitive to our hunger. There's a couple of places where we'll skip certain things because people are hungry. People are in a rush. Anyone who davens Marv, whoever davens Marv has to daven at like fastest speed in the world. We don't pass it this way, unfortunately, or whatever. But basically, yeah. But whatever. And we do Kiddush Levan after, yeah, which is whatever, discussion for its own time. But you're right, okay, fine. But Rabbi Chanina Amar, Rabbi Gamliel says from the name of his fathers, why don't we pass in this way? You have to daven the full 18. Why? Because there is the Havdalah that we incorporate into Shemona Esrei called Tachanun Tanu, which can only be said when we say a full Shemona Esrei. Okay, it's a little technical over here, but he says, but the bottom line is, what do we see from the Brisa? Alma or Tahu. We see from here that or means night. Shema Mina. Once again, it is proven. Further, Tashma, we have a Brisa, which is parallel to our Mishnah. We've spoken about this many times. Brisas are from the word bar, means outside. So you have Mishnayos, which are the ones that made the cut. Those are the ones that Yehuda Nasi incorporated into our Mishnayos. Brisas are the things that didn't make the cut, but they were traditions. Those traditions oftentimes are a little bit more verbose, and sometimes they could shed light on what a Mishnah means. So if you have a Brisa which has very similar language, we could use that Brisa to help us understand what our Mishnah actually meant. So let's see this Brisa. The Tani Devei Shmuel was taught in the Academy of Shmuel. Leile Arba Asr, in the night, here it says Laila, the night of the 14th, Bodkin or as a Chametz or Haner, we search for Chametz. And this Brisa, which is parallel, which is similar to our Mishnah, clearly what is the word or? There it says night explicitly, Alma or Tahu. Okay, so clearly or means night. So now the Gemara, after all these proofs, which is established clearly that our Mishnah means that the night of the 14th, that we do B'dikas Chametz on the night before Pesach, which is the way we paskin, which is the way we do it. So the Gemara says, Ela bein Rav Yehuda, avein Rav Huna, uvein Rav Yehuda. Whether you are going like Rav Huna or Rav Yehuda, dekuli alma or artahu. Everyone agrees that or means night. V'lo pligi, they're not arguing. Marki asre, they just have different ways of describing night. In other words, they both agree that the way to interpret our Mishnah is that the night of the 14th, meaning the night before Pesach, is when you do B'dikas Chametz. But one of them uses and let's see what this means, but Asri Rav Huna, Karu Nage. In the location of Rav Huna, they call night light. I know it seems like counterintuitive. Max, like, what in the world? Why are they so confusing? It's a euphemism. In the Gemara, how do they describe a blind person? They describe a blind person by someone who has like great vision. It's not meant to like be it's like a euphemistic type of language where you use the opposite. So similarly, they call night by light, okay? And whereas in the city of Rav Yehuda, they call it simply night. Okay, Tana Didan, my time look Tani Laila. So why is our Tana, when he said, why is he much more clear? Right? We expect our Tanaim, those who are teaching, to be as clear as possible. So why doesn't he just use the clear term of night? Why does he make us go on this 2.5 page? You just started Pesachim, like, why in the world are we doing this? I want to know what I could eat and when I could eat it and chametz. Why are we spending 2 pages talking about being so confused because he couldn't just say Laila? Why not? And this is where it's all going. Lishnama al Yehuda nakat. Atana wanted to use a more refined expression and to say night Even though to you and me, that would be like, that's, that's not exactly our, what are the jars, people have like a bad language jar. This is not like, when I say night, I don't put like $1 into that jar. It's not exactly, but it's still more refined to use a slightly more positive term. Okay, he says the Amar of Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi says a person should be very careful not to emit any coarse expression from their mouth. The Torah adds 8 letters. We're at 383, and not to emit a coarse expression. Shenemar, as it says, in discussing the animals which are kosher, not kosher, use the word tahar to say kosher. And from the animals that are not tahar, it should have just said from the animals that are Tameh. It says anena tehorad. It says extra words, extra letters in order to avoid saying Tameh. So you see how careful we have to be. We have to emulate this, bless you, to ensure that we don't use a word that could somewhat have a negative connotation. And therefore the Torah says, or light, because that is one of the expressions of night, because it's a more refined language. The Torah is emphasizing, and not coincidentally, and there's a theme of Pesachim, the Rizal famously says, what does the word Pesach mean? Pesach. It is a speaking mouth. So much of the themes of Pesach, which we're not going to get into right now, are about the terms that are used. The Jewish people, when they're Mitzrayim, initially when they cry out, they're unable to speak. They just cry. It says they just cry, bless you. They're not able to use words, but eventually when we get to Geula is not just a physical redemption, but we are able to express ourselves. And speech is a major theme in the whole story of Pesach, and not coincidentally, the Masechta begins with a emphasis on refined speech, because that is an important thing. Okay, now we're going to go into a bit of a discussion about how.
Point out, Rashi says also that it says Tamei all the time.
We're gonna get there. Good. We're gonna get there on Amud base. Rav Papa, let's catch up a little bit of ground. Rav Papa points out Tate Amar Tesha. He says really the Torah elsewhere adds 9 letters. You just said 8. He's gonna up you. He says really the Torah adds 9 letters. Where Shnemer ki yebecha ish asher lo yatar mikra laila. The Torah talks about someone who has a nocturnal emission, and it says instead of saying the person's tameh, it says asher lo yatar mikra laila. Someone who is impure, who is not pure, instead of just saying impure, in English it sounds like the same, but tameh, instead of just saying tameh, it says someone who is not pure because they had a nocturnal emission. Well, you could have just said someone who's tameh. Okay, Ravina Amar Esther. There's actually 10 letters. Vav Datar. If you look at that pasuk, the pasuk is in what's it called? The pasuk is in Devarim. It adds an extra vav in tahar. Normally tahar is spelled tes hey reish. It adds an extra letter. Again, they're all just emphasizing the fact that Torah goes out of its way to avoid the word tameh. Okay, Rav Achabar Yaakov Amar from another place, Sheish Esrei, 16 letters. Shnemer, as it says, Ki Amar Mikre Hu Bilti Tahar Hu Ki Lo Tahar. Okay, it's a long pasuk describing David HaMelech. An incident has occurred. He is not tahar, for he has not been cleansed. Instead of just saying a tameh incident has occurred, so much shorter. Tanir Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says, "L'ol misapar l'mashon nikia." He says, is taught in the base manners of Rabbi Shmuel. A person should always speak in refined language. Shari bezav pro merkav. When it talks about the zav by a man, okay, a zav is a form of tuma, and there are different ways that a zav is able to. A zav is someone who sees certain emissions, and a zav, when a person establishes a zav, whether a male or female, both a male or female can become a zav. When they become a zav, they pass on impurity to other things, other people. They are tameh. And when it describes a zav, a male who is on riding on something, it says kra'u merkav. It says he's riding. Uveisha kra'u moshav. But when it talks about a woman, it says it's a seat. It's the same tuma, but it does not call her riding. Rather, it says a seat. It's seen as like an unrefined. It's not a most delicate way to speak about a woman. To be riding, it has like a sexual connotation, and therefore by a woman, it says she's sitting. Okay. V'omer, and we have other sources. V'tivchar lashon arumim. The pasuk says it was taught. The Brisa continues, and it brings more sources. It says you should, based on Eov, it says you should have chosen the language of the wise. V'omer, in another source, v'das sfasai bar milelu. My lips expressed refined knowledge. Okay, so the Gemara now wants to understand why to bring 3 sources. If you want to make a point, just bring one source. Why did it first bring the source from a zav, and then it quoted 2 psukim? So what's it telling you? Ma'va Omer, why does it have 3 sources? So b'chitei mahani mili b'daraisa, because had it just said the zav zava, you would have thought that's specifically the way the Torah talks. It would have said, okay, the Torah talks in a refined language, but you and I, but others, aval b'drabanan lo. But when the rabbis speak, they don't have to be so refined. Tashma, and therefore we have a second proof that says Omer v'tivchar lashon arumim, you should choose the language of the wise. Okay, b'chitei mahani mili b'drabanan. Then you would have said maybe that's only when there are rabbinic teachings. Maybe when we're in shul, when we're in base matters and we're teaching, okay, then we should use refined language. But I'm at home, I'm at work, whatever, then I could mutter something under my breath. Maybe ordinary matters. No. No. Every person, no matter what the context is, no matter what you're feeling, no matter where you are, you should always, my lips express refined knowledge. That is the ideal. And we should all be very careful with the way we speak. Have a wonderful day.